Engineers' never-ending obsession with innovation is no stranger to the controller world, even when the standard controller is more or less set on stone. But with the Apex 2, Flydigi showed us that they are able to combine those standards with new ideas. And now they bring us the Apex 3, with new ideas, more compatibility, and more features similar to the ones on controllers like the Elite 2 and DualSense. But do they really improve the gaming experience, or are just to show who has the longest list? Welcome back, I'm Claudio, and this is Zero to Tech. We already tested the Flydigi Apex 2, and surprised us with quality and features we haven't seen in other controllers. Its biggest trick, the sliding buttons. But now, the Apex 3 looks more common, but implements adaptive triggers like the PlayStation 5 controller, and a color screen, which we will check later in the video. The box now has a much simpler design. It is completely black, and apart from the signs and the logo, the only thing that shows the controller is the icon. On the back, there is a picture of the controller on both sides. We open it to see a welcome letter with very good spelling, and we remove the protected front to find the controller. This time, it does not include a case like the Apex 2, nor the additional sticks, but it does have the same braided USB A to C cable, and it has the 2.4 GHz adapter with no NUC to store it on the controller. There is a little box with the Flydigi documentation, and a bag with a cell phone pin and some caps for the RGB, the instruction booklet not translated to English, and some stickers. Finally, there is the controller. This time, the phone clip is not included, you must buy it separately. The design is similar to the Xbox controller, this time without the C and Z buttons, and just a home button in the bottom center. Below, it has two pin connectors for its dock, also sold separately. Above, we have LB, RB, LT and RT. The last two this time are analog. We also have the USB-C port. You'll notice that there is no M5 and M6 like in the Apex 2. But on the back, we do have the M1 to M4 in the same position, and the power switch. The front cover is a single piece of transparent plastic, which is a fingerprint magnet, although you don't see that much in the areas you grab it. It can be removed. First, you remove the D-pad and the sticks, then you can separate it. It's supported by magnets. When you open it, you can see the vibrators on the screen, and although it looks like metal, it's just plastic. But the controller is quite heavy, 312 grams, the second heaviest controller after the Elite 2. So what can you do after removing the cover? Not much. Just change the sign that comes over the RGB. It comes with this one, but you can use the ones included with the phone pin to make your own design and change it. About the clip, it is identical to the one on the Apex 2. It has a ladder design that it's easy to adjust and hold the position, although it does not have the screws to tighten it. The phone fits very well, and the design avoids pressing the buttons on the sides. Very good overall. And like the Apex 2, the main focus of the Apex 3 is the compatibility and the additional features. The first and most visible one is the screen. It has two functions. First, to show you an animation with a bird that reacts to the control presses, and that you can change through the software on Windows. It includes many designs, and you can create your own with a GIF, but it doesn't do much else, only the default animation reacts to the inputs. Its second function is the configuration menus, which you enter by holding down the home button. Unfortunately, it's only in Chinese, but it doesn't have that many settings, so it's a matter of getting to know what they do. The first one lets you change the protocols. This time, it supports more platforms. For 2.4 and USB, X input and direct input, and with Bluetooth, Android, the mapping mode, iOS and the Nintendo Switch. At least in this menu, each option is clear. The second one allows you to switch between 4 different profiles. These are only available for X input, direct input and switch. And you can also switch without going into the menu, by pressing select plus the home button plus any of the face buttons, one per profile. The next menu allows you to change the brightness on the screen. The next one lets you start the pairing. And the last two are for information only. On Android, to get the more out of the controller, you need to install the Flydigi Game Center. This app gives you access to many of the features. First of all, to the mapping mode, which requires an activation process common to these apps. And once you do it, just like in the Apex 2, it is the best screen mapping we have ever tested. We will see how good later in the video. You can also change the Android mode directly in the app. You can assign one to each game to change it automatically when you run the game from the app. It also lets you update the firmware, and that you can change the RGB mode, colors and the brightness. Also, test the controller functions, including the gyro. Something very important is that it lets you calibrate the controller, including the sticks, triggers and gyroscope. Supposedly, you can do it right on the controller, but no matter how hard we tried, it didn't work well. In fact, it kept getting worse. But after doing it with the app, everything worked perfectly. And you can do even more with the Windows app. It also lets you update the firmware, and you can change even more settings. In addition to the screen animation, you can change settings for each of the modes, except on Android. In PC and Switch mode, you have 4 profiles, where you can customize the vibration level, the colors of the LEDs, that can help you know which profile you are in. You can also change the function of any of the buttons, and configure the additional buttons. You can adjust the action curve of the sticks, and map the gyro to a stick or mouse while you press a button. And finally, you can adjust the effects for each trigger. There are 3 kinds. Racing, which simulates the thrower and brake. It basically makes them stiffer. Auto, which simulates the effect of a submachine gun, where there is resistance at first, and then a constant vibration. And finally Sniper, which simulates a trigger, where the first half is hard, but once you passed it, the pressure loosens up. These last 2 even change the behavior of the buttons to digital. Now, it's not the same as in Sony's, where the effects are linked to the game. But Flydigi went a bit further and included a whole section with mods for specific games, which you can activate and load the game from there. What a pity! Sony could license the technology to other controllers if they were a bit more open. Or, if Flydigi were more popular, some games could implement native support. Finally, the battery is 1500 mAh, which is the largest battery we have seen in a controller outside of the Mogas, and should last about 20 hours in Bluetooth modes and with RGB at maximum. The charging time is 3 hours. Regarding latency, we were able to test it in 6 different modes, which let us compare the protocols and connections. For USB, the 2 protocols are basically the same, and with the 2.4G adapters, the numbers are almost identical to the USB. Quite good. With Bluetooth, there is a little more difference, being the Android protocol the slowest, but overall good numbers. It's good that we started with this, because there's something that I have not mentioned that I am very excited about. The front buttons. It's not something we talk about much, but these buttons are mechanical, not like the Xiaomi's nonsense of saying they are when they are just micro switches. These do feel very different. They have much more trouble than micro switches, similar to a membrane button, and they have a very satisfying feeling when pressed, like a mechanical keyboard. Even the click sounds great. They are now my favorite buttons. They even have an excellent design. The rest of the buttons are more common. Art and Dale use micro switches, also feel very good. Also the programmable buttons on the back, which feel better than the Apex 2. And Select, Start and Home use dome switches. They all feel and work perfect. Also the DPad is not common. It uses micro switches, but the design is taller. The pivot point is fixed and very high, so the travel is longer than you would expect. Its design is circular, with a cross in the center that reminds us of the Sega's D-pads, and although I did not expect much from it, the performance was a surprise. D-pads with micro switches are usually not the best in the sequence test, because the transfer to diagonals is not as clear, but Flydigi clearly worked a lot on this, because it works perfect. The special moves come out without issues, every time, without fail. It's a big surprise. And on the separation test, which usually is the forte on micro switches, it has no problems. You can force diagonals by just pressing one direction, but only in some directions and really forcing them. There is no way this will happen by accident. And changing directions and knowing when it's diagonal is very clear. Easily the best micro switch D-pad I have ever tried. The analog buttons will be familiar to anyone who has used an Xbox controller. They are identical in shape and throw, if only a little stiffer, but they have a surprise that we discovered when opening it. They don't use a potentiometer, they are Hall effect. Interesting because they never mention it, but it makes sense when you see the adaptive trigger mechanism. We had to calibrate them because at the beginning they had about 30% dead zone at the end, but after the calibration it went down to almost nothing. I was a little scared how bad they were, and that they work perfect. We tested them first on Android with Grid and they worked great. The travel is linear and once calibrated it has no issues. We also tested them on PC in Dirt Rally 2 and it worked great. The only catch is that we tried to use the specific mod for the game and it did nothing. It didn't change the behavior of the adaptive triggers. I also tried them with the accelerator and brake mode. and truth be told, it doesn't do much. It makes the trigger stiffer, which may help you regulate the throw, but if you're used to it, it won't make it better. Worse still, in games like Rocket League, it hampers the experience. It's more for racing games. Now let's check the sticks. They are the same as the Apex 2. They can even be removed and changed for the highest ones, but now you must buy them separately. They are very sensitive. They have no dead zone at the bottom and a very small one at the top. Not bad, but this after calibration. They draw a rather circular figure, although the corners are not perfect, but the movement is. First of all, no strange jumps and stops, and as soon as you touch them, they register. In the rounding test, they have a 7.1% error rate for the left and 8.8% for the right. Fairly good. And all this translates to shooters. Aiming and following your victim is easy. Unfortunately, they do not apply any cheats to be compatible with Call of Duty Mobile and Apex Legends on Android, even when the iOS mode connects as an Xbox controller. For some reason, on Windows and Android it doesn't pair. But to compensate, Flydigi has an excellent mapping mode, which is the best. It has the same activation process as Mantis, but once on, it's perfect. As we said in the Apex 2 review, between the sticks and the app, it's the best mapping mode we have tested. And thanks to the apps, you can also map the movement of the gyroscope to the right stick. On Android, this only works in mapping mode. You have to enable it within the app, and it complements the right stick perfectly. For the rest of the modes, you must activate it and assign it to profiles. The only one where it's not available is on Switch mode, because support is native. For others, you can set it to activate only when you press a button such as aiming, and the same as the Apex 2, although we had to adjust the sensitivity to make it work better. It is by far the best implementation of this feature. Since the controller is compatible with more platforms, we had to test them. The first is the Nintendo Switch. It is the third controller this year, positioned as an alternative to the Pro controller. It only works connected by Bluetooth, but it works very well. First of all, it has 4 profiles, so you can use all the features including the programmable buttons and the adaptive triggers, even though this only works as digital buttons. Everything else is in its place, except for the capture button, which is M4. The gyroscopes works natively and feels the same as the official Pro controller. We tried it in Zelda and Mario Galaxy and it's perfect. Same as the other modes, the sensitivity is excellent. And since many of you always ask this, yes, it can turn on the Switch. Both when you turn it on, or if the controller is in standby, by pressing the home button. It's an excellent option, better than the original in almost all cases, but it doesn't have the HD vibration or the Amiibo reader. It works perfect on Windows too. We already saw the application that lets you customize almost everything. But the important thing is that as a controller, everything works fine. With direct input it detects all the buttons, and with X input it is compatible with all games no matter if they are on Xbox or Windows, Steam or the Epic Store. But unlike the Apex 2, Rewatch does not detect it as a specific controller. This limits your access to the additional features to the Flydigi app. It's very new, so hopefully they can add the support later. And about the mods for the digital triggers, they did not work for us. As much as we tried with Forza Horizon 4 and Dirt Rally, and the Flydigi application did detect them, it would start a service, but once in the game it did nothing. They never changed the mode or anything, and if they were off, they stayed off. Hopefully the support improves because when it works, it's a great feature. The last supported platform is iOS, where, like all compatible controllers, if the game has support for it, you can use it. There are no artificial blocks like in Android. We tested it first with Genshin Impact and everything was perfect. We also tested Forza Horizon within Xbox Game Pass and it detects everything. The analog buttons and even the home button work. The only additional thing to mention is that, in iOS, there is only one profile, but inside it, you can use all the features of the controller. Great, and with the clip, easily one of the best controllers for iPhone. Officially, the price is $120 for the controller only, $130 with the clip, and $140 with the dock. But unless you're in the US, Amazon is not the place to buy it, because it's much cheaper on AliExpress, where you can get it for $100 with the clip. Yes, it doesn't make it a cheap controller, but it does put on the same level as the Apex 2, although it doesn't include as many accessories. And it is still cheaper than the premium controllers from Microsoft and Sony, because seriously, this is a premium controller. In summary, it's a great controller. The screen is just a distraction, but the quality and features are top-notch. just like the Apex 2 with its weird sliding buttons. Don't you believe me? Then check out this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and remember, retro games, modern technology, zero to tech.